As someone who's always been fascinated by NASA and the space program, this show has been on my radar for years, but I just never got around to watching it. Finally, about a month ago, I decided to jump in, and I have not been sorry. So let's talk about For All Mankind. In an alternative version of 1969, the Soviet Union beats the United States to the moon, and the space race continues on for decades with still grander challenges and goals. The series stars Joel Kinnaman, Michael Dorman, Wrenn Schmidt, and Shantel VanSanten. There have been many movies and shows and just stories over the years about, alternate versions of history, like pivotal moments. Like what if the Nazis won World War II? I mean, it's kind of an interesting thought exercise anyway, but one of my favorite ones has nothing to do with history at all. It's has to do with Star Wars, Star Wars Infinities. So like what would have happened if Luke missed the shot on the exhaust port on the Death Star? Like how would things have played out? And I think that's it's really fun. And this one in particular was like, what a cool idea. There's been some people that have said that you need to be into NASA, like be a NASA fanboy or into the space program or into test pilots to really, really get into this show. And while I agree that, maybe some interest in it might not hurt, there's so much human stuff going on. The human drama of it all is it's just really, really well done. And I think that's what this show does exceedingly well, is the blending of the, I guess, the setting, which is, the space race, mixed with that human drama. I mean, that is the heart of this show, and there's so much good stuff here. There are moments, especially early on, where you're introduced to so many characters that it can be a bit overwhelming. But look, it is worth it, especially growing and changing with these characters over the years. You get to see all of these pivotal changes in their lives and how they react to it. It's really, really awesome. And just from an acting standpoint, that has got to be so much fun to dig your teeth into a character throughout the years. What happens in For All Mankind season to season is really, really interesting, because what they do is that they sort of do these little time jumps. And these time jumps are almost like differences in the technology being used. So for like, example, the Apollo program in the 60s and 70s versus the space shuttle program in the 80s. But you're not just seeing the tech change, you're seeing how the people have progressed, the different characters that we've been following. And then you can see the way that the whole country has changed, right? Just because the Soviet Union beat the United States to the moon, it's made all of these rippling changes throughout, politically, in society. It's really, really cool to see this play out. I've always been sort of bummed out that, especially here in the U.S., the space program is kind of like nobody really talks about it. It's not a cool thing anymore. I mean, growing up, I wanted to be an astronaut or a test pilot or something like that. Just from a very young age, that's what I wanted to do. So to see the way that this show takes that idea of the U.S. losing to how it changes the space program, how it changes the views of people in the country, and it continues to ripple out in the future, it's really, really neat to see. Two other great things that stick out is that you learn very quickly that no character is safe. Like, seriously, no character is safe. It actually kind of feels a little like Game of Thrones in that way, where it seems like the moment you start really getting attached to somebody is when something happens and you're like, oh, okay, oh, wow, all right. And then the other thing is that, again, so much great plot surrounding the space program, surrounding these people's lives. Some of it has nothing to do with the space program, but it's really, really interesting stuff, and how it affects, like I said, the country, the society as a whole, the way that things have progressed just slightly differently along the way may have been a more interesting world. I'm not sure. The actors are fantastic across the board. I mean, seriously, there's not one weak link in this show. It's really, really well done. The casting is fantastic. But I will say that toward the end of season 2, a development happens, and if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about, that made me so... It made me insane. where I was like yelling and commenting under my breath when the characters would show up again. I'm like, it was such a wow. I still am not really seeing why all of that was necessary. But hey, I still enjoy the show. It's just that thing is like, okay, why? But that is just a blip in an otherwise fantastic show. I mean, technically, this show is great. It looks great. The direction is consistent throughout, which is really hard to do. I mean, different directors do each episode, and you would think that it was just one person directing all of it, but it's not, and that's really difficult to do. The CG is top notch. I will admit, there are a couple of moments where it's not 100%, but it doesn't detract from the story being told. It's very well done. The music is great. Like I said, everything's great. Technically, this show is fantastic. So this show has it all. You know, you've got a great story, you've got fantastic characters, and technically, it's top notch. There's moments where you will sit there and go, wow, I cannot believe this is a streaming show. This is really impressive stuff. So I highly recommend you to watch this show if you haven't seen it already. So, for all mankind, I'm particularly interested to see if there's anyone who hasn't seen the show yet who watched this review and said, yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, all right. So let me know down below what you're thinking about it, and especially those who have seen the show. Are there things that I mentioned that you really love about the show, or that you really don't like about the show? Let's talk about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.